Welcome back to the broadcast. Still with the papers, or going through the papers with Honorable Dr. Iseli Simiyu, Member of Parliament Tongaren, and governance expert Kevin Osido, as we await Member of Parliament of Kitui East to join us for more on the conversation. Briefly, Africa Trade Area or Africa Free Trade Area is here with both losers and gainers. Kenya products won't compete favorably with other African products. So that is a story that is captured on page 2 of the Daily Nation. The cost of production in Kenya is so high, making it unsustainable to produce at the same price as other countries. So much so is happening towards us getting that integration aspect as Africans. I mean, getting to that level where we can speak of even having a common currency, having an Africa country where you can easily traverse without having to worry about visas and all these, restrictions that will probably be there. But just how realistic is this a story or a scenario that we've been talking about for the longest of time at the level of the African Union? Is this a good thing? Is this something to celebrate? But then again, how then do you celebrate when we're leaving other countries out? Honorable Iseli.
I think this is something that's coming late in our time.
Yeah.
Africa as a whole is a huge market. And once we are divided, it's been to the benefit of the other countries in the world. But if we are to make this useful, then it also looking at countries like Kenya. We need to look at ways of reducing the cost of production. Start with electricity. The cost of electricity in Kenya is madness. It's total madness.
Right. And it's set to go high, by the way. There's a story that has been captured on one of the papers, yes.
That's why we need to relook at it.
Yes.
It's not a question of sloganeering on political platforms about it. Oh, we are going to increase electricity production to this amount. We are going to connect, I don't know how many domestic whatevers. Those domestic whatevers you are connecting that power to, are they able to afford it? Because many of them have had their electricity disconnected because they can't afford it. Yeah. So now is the time to get down to brass tacks and work it out so that we actually indeed have cheap power so that our production costs are lowered. Then various other things that lead to high production costs. There are many licenses, like you have to get accounting or something, you have to get something from the national government and so on. This is the time now to relook at it so that we can reduce production and ensure that our goods are competitive. Because even as we speak, the cost of diesel just went up the other day, just before the plowing season and planting season. So the cost of even agricultural production goes out of hand. So this is the time, if Kenya indeed wants to compete in Africa properly, fairly, now is the time to sit down and look at what are the things we need to do to reduce the production costs. It's very important because these things build on themselves. One is the cost of feeding a family, say in the city like Nairobi, is so high because of the cost of production of the agricultural products, even getting them to the market. So we need to look at all these things holistically, such that the cost of food production itself is lowered, then the cost of food becomes cheaper, and everything will build on that. And there are so many things we need to look at, and now is the time. I think we as Kenyans need to get out of sloganeering and start roll up our sleeves and start working at it. We know what we need to do, but we never get to do it. Then when we want to do it, there are so many roadblocks on the way, rent seekers on the way, people collecting something on the way, that it just removes everything. So right now, I would say that this is a wake-up call for Kenya. We need to wake up.
And I think I agree. One, it has been a continent of kickbacks, and most of the investors have actually even feared coming to invest in most of the African countries because of that. You will always get this roadblock somewhere along the way. Leaving alone the aspect of, how difficult this can be for Kenya as a country, but just the African, view at large. and looking at how many times we have tried to push for the same, looking at how many times we've had other countries trying to pull out, from some of these agreements that we set as a continent, and just how instrumental then this would be for us to be able to beat the superpowers, because in most cases you realize that the argument is actually not in most cases the truth. The resources lie in Africa, but sadly enough they don't benefit us in any way.
Linda, we have to, as Africa and Africans, identify our own champions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these agreements are agreements that are, one, proposed by outsiders. And when I say outsiders here, I mean powers who are outside Africa.
Yeah.
And then two, the people who champion for them are actually non-Africans. If you look at AGOA, for instance, is Americans.
Right.
Africa Trade Agreement is largely Africans. But let's not forget that actually yesterday, I think it's we have the first African lady who is now the Director General of WTO. The question is, what will Africa do with many of these conventions? Do they really provide opportunities for us to strengthen our power, our economic power? And economic power also has a lot to do with social power. How do we relate even among ourselves?
Right.
And among ourselves means farmers, agriculturalists, people in the tea, coffee industry, people in agrarian farming, people who are doing fish farming, aquaculture and all that. Kenya, a few years ago, hosted the Blue Economy Conference at a very high level. And the question is, how committed, again, are Africans to some of these, recommendations and the memoranda documents that we sign in the presence of all these powers? And most of the people who therefore come out to be able to champion for most of this are not Africans. So the question, Linda, is, do these agreements, do these commitments, do these conventions even mean anything to Africans? And so the answer to that question to me is devolving most of these things to the level where the action is, so that then the value chain is also, circular and it is continuing. So that when we are having high-level conferences at KICC, can we have replicas taking place in Kimilili, so that the farmers, the tea farmers there, can actually relate to and with what is taking place and is being discussed at that high-level national conversation. When it's happening in Nigeria, and it is something that is therefore African, and so Kenyans need to take action because of the regional blocks, East and Central Africa, where Kenya is touted to be the superpower. Do those conventions really mean sense to the region? Do Ugandans understand what they are, that the interactions between Kenyans and Ugandans to a larger extent will affect the border conversations? Do Tanzanians, in whether Namanga or Arusha, understand that what is happening in their country actually affects what is happening in Kenya, and therefore at the regional level and then global? So I think the conversations are good, but the problem is that they are taking place at a very high level where really the action is not being felt. And so when we look at the policy conversations against the practicals, there is such a huge gap. And that's why, in my view, I think most of them are not progressive. They are not responsive to the feelings of the people. And so Africans, Kenyans, we need to identify our champions, people who will stand strong to be able to say yes when the agreements are working and no when they are not working. Because why they work for certain people, particularly Americans and sometimes Britons, is because they know what they are looking for after all those conversations or after all those agreements. Do Africans, do Kenyans also look at them from that particular lens? And I think, as you rightfully said, kickbacks for Africans works, but progress and prosperity for non-Africans, the powers that be, is what is working for them. And that's really where the difference is, that when we make policies, also let those policies be policies that make business, ease of doing business is enhanced, as opposed to some middlemen and women coming up to be saying, I'm the one who knows the minister, the CS for industrialization. I can help you get cheaper rates and cheaper costs for your power. I am the one who knows the CS for agriculture. I can help you get better fertilizer, because he's a person who has to say what it is. Let the environment be made progressive. Let the environment be made easy for anyone who wants to venture into whatever sort of business it is. And that way, I think, the more we are involving each other, the better it will be for us. Because if Mheshimiwa doesn't have seeds for coffee and I have better seeds, I can be able to provide. As opposed to saying, pay more and then I give you what I have. And then ultimately, once you pay more and you're given what you have, you cannot produce it. I mean, the cost of production, as Mheshimiwa says, then becomes so high. And ultimately, in 2 to 3 years, you have nothing to produce. And that's what I think is affecting us. Because in this country, we have had a lot of conversations around importation of maize. People have even been accused of selling rotten maize to Kenyans, flour in shops that are full of aflatoxin, but nothing is done. We've had conversations in this country about rice, rice which is brought from other countries, and nothing is done to people who are killing our rice industries in Muhoroni, in Chemelil, in Embu areas. We have had conversations around sugar, which is being brought from outside the country, but nothing is done to people who are killing our local production industries.
All right, well, in most cases we say when such happens, it is important that we pick conversations around the same. This one is one that I cannot fail to speak about. Endangered. There are only 2 female northern white rhinos left in the world. Surrogates found for Rhino Sudan's offspring. I think this is a good one. I don't know whether you people remember at that time when everyone was mourning the death of Sudan. Do you remember Sudan the rhino? Or you probably that did not have it must have crossed you. But yes, this is indeed some good news. We want to conduct an embryo transfer into the southern white rhino females, ones that they have been looked at as animals that are said to extinct. But then this is indeed some good news. As we drop the Daily Nation, briefly we look at what is captured on the front page of the Standard newspaper. More or less the same story: Haji, peace broker and schemer. We have talked about that. From one selection, why your child could be stuck in the village. That is also another story that is here, even as we talk about the incorporation of the competency-based curriculum and the progresses that we expect on matters education. We might not go into depth with that. And this story that you're talking about the cost of fuel and the cost of electricity becoming high is one that has been captured on the front page of the Standard newspaper, expounded on page, should be 36 or 34 there. You have it right. And so cost of fuel and power may rise over draft rules. That is also one that we need to probably have a conversation revolving around. The People Daily. Inside illicit bag, hugely lucrative charcoal trade. I think again this one, comes to that particular discussion that we have on the Africa free trade. We might not be able to expound some more on it, but then it is happening, and it's very unfortunate that we have these reports that expose how commodity that is being used in the Middle East as a vicious scramble between a cartel drawing corruption or corrupt traders, police, politicians, and officials charged with saving Kenya's forests. That is one thing. We are losing our forest. We had a campaign the other day that was started by the CS for matters that should be, yes, Kiriako Tobiko. That was sometimes the forestry, yes, and anti-logging campaign. I don't know how far we're able to take that, but then we're talking about it. Border borders to be trained on safety and investment, pretty much important of a conversation to have. I think that one we will drop and allow us to get into a conversation. And we discuss just how genuine we are in the politics of the day today, that in relation to what is happening within our very own parties. I'm sure we've talked about this, Mheshimiwa, for the longest of time, but it is unfortunate to note that even as we continue talking about the same, this continues to happen even more. The intolerance that we witness within our very own political parties, the factions that continue to, come up within this particular political party is not so bad. It is healthy in terms of matters democracy, but it does not seem to take a good trajectory. I'd love for us to know what is happening in Fort Kenya as at now. You've been very silent.
We are silent because there are court cases that we need to deal with. Because what happened in Fort Kenya was that the National Executive Council decided to relieve the leader of Fort Kenya of those duties because they felt that he has failed in running the party. But you also need to remember that of all the political parties in Kenya, Fort Kenya is the second oldest party and has gone through several transitions. It's not the first time. Only that every transition in Fort Kenya has not been very smooth. Every transition, right from inception. From inception between Jaramogi Odinga and Ken Matiba, there was acrimony, and that gave birth to Ford Asili and Ford Kenya. Then you come to the transition between the late Jaramogi to Wamalwa Kijana.
Yeah.
There was a lot of push and pull between Wamalwa Kijana and Raila Odinga. Then after Wamalwa Kijana, when Musikari Kombo took over, there was a tiff between him and Mukisa Kitui and the late Soita Shitanda.
Right.
When Wetangula was taking over from Kombo, it was also a long-drawn issue. So there's always been a problem with transition, and I've always argued that there's an inherent fault in the Fourth Kenya Constitution that we need to relook at. And I'm hoping at the next NDC, the members will agree to work on that constitution so that we don't have these acrimonious transitions. But all that said and done, of all the parties, Fourth Kenya is the one that has actually had transitions, acrimonious as they might be, but they have always had transitions. And right now the acrimony that's happening is because previously Fort Kenya had NDCs that led to the transitions every 4 years.
Right.
Every 4 years like clockwork. But since 2011, when Honorable Senator Masika Wetangula took over, there has been no NDC for now 10 years. Which is an aberration, because from the inception of Fort Kenya there was always an NDC every 4 years. Yeah. But it has not been there for over 10 years. And I think that's what has led to the acrimony. Because if you don't have transition, even if you are not changing the top leadership, but you are infusing new blood into the management of the party, then you'll get dissatisfaction. And I think that's what we are facing right now. Even if we argue that because of COVID we were unable to have an NDC and things like that, COVID came long after the NDC for Fort Kenya was long overdue. Yeah. So it's an issue that has to be looked at. But I believe that the transition will occur because we can't go on that way.
All right. Well, I'd look at it as a race of turtles, because then again you can hear Mheshimiwa proud saying that at least this is the only party that has had proper transitions, or so to speak, as acrimonious as they may look. Probably year in, year out, we would have expected that they have noticed there's a problem in the transition processes and maybe tried their level best to fix this. But because they look around and they see no other party that has proper transitions, then they sit comfortable knowing that at least we are better off in comparison to the other parties that are in existence. Probably this informs the reason why I talked about politics of betrayal and greed. Is this a show of so much greed and betrayal that plays out in this particular party, such that even when it comes to the process of transition, there are some people who would choose to go out, some of them would be there, but then again, the level of betrayal that is witnessed within, the level of, talk of greed that is witnessed within, is one that speaks of a party that lacks proper structures?
Actually, that, in my view, is a response. Structures. A political party is an institution. It is an institution of governance within itself among those who have agreed to operate for the objectives as to why that party or that organization exists. Yeah. Like a family, you cannot have a child who walks in when he or she wants, it is 2 a.m., she's not gotten home, doesn't want to be asked, where are you coming from? It is not proper. Two, the other challenge that affects our political parties is the manner in which they are organized. A lot of these parties revolve around personalities. And this is true to the fact, and Mheshimiwa is here to confirm for the sake of Ford Kenya, not to mention all the other parties that are not represented here, because I don't belong to either of the 61 registered, so I won't speak for them. But you see the manner in which they operate. It's always an individual who is the one around coordinating almost everything, and everything operates around this individual. So we must begin to look at how do we move out of this personification of political parties to individuals. Right. Number 3 is the membership. How are these members relating to the political party? At what point do you say that you have been betrayed, and betrayed over what, by who, for what particular gain? In Kenya, betrayal comes when we begin to ask for a space of power. That is political power. And in our country, power is therefore exuded at 2 levels. The presidency, and today, because of devolution, post-2010 constitution, 2013, 2017, we have governors. And so MCS at the level where they operate many times you don't hear a lot of this talk we are calling betrayal coming to the fore because of the manner in which the capacity of power is exercised and exuded at those two levels,
right.
Presidential and gubernatorial. And so if you look at the people who own, quote unquote, these political parties outside the membership, because membership is by subscription and you pay certain fees to either be an ordinary member or a life member and all that. I hope that Ford Kenya also has that kind of structuralization.
Yeah.
And so when you are a life member who has been promised certain power or a certain space and sit close to what the political power of the party is, and you don't get it, and in Kenya, what happens is that somebody else gets it, and then you begin to say you have been betrayed.
Yeah.
But then as a member of this political party, what is your commitment? Is your commitment going to begin to ask for greed? And so you are trying to shortchange and shortcut your political party leader and the other members, especially the person that you have a feeling was brought closer to the seat that you are supposed to take.
Yeah.
And so in finishing, Linda, you don't see many times political parties responding to the needs of the citizens. So even the talk around betrayal and greed is purely around political space as opposed to service delivery. But when you begin to have Kenyans and citizens feeling happy about your political party and saying, Mheshimiwa, you spoke well about healthcare, which is not working. Mheshimiwa, you spoke so well about the rising cost of energy, and we feel that your party is responding to our needs.
Right.
Then that way, the conversation will tilt. And so people will begin to associate with your party, not based on political power, but
right.
based on how a champion you are against and for the things which are working for them and against things which are not working for the citizens. And so that's why many times even membership of political parties is only ascribed to regions.
Right.
So Ford Kenya, most of those who are members of Ford Kenya would probably be Luyas. If you go to ODM, most of those who are ODM members would probably be Luos.
Right.
Because the political party has been organized around an individual who is from that particular tribe, and even the manner in which activities of the party are exhibited to the citizens revolve around the manner in which the behavior of the bigger chunk of the membership of that party behave in that particular
Again,
manner.
Honorable Eseli Simiyu would tell you that at least Ford Kenya is that one party that enjoys, support across different parts of the countries, with offices across different parts of the countries. In as much as you say that when you hear Ford Kenya, which is true, you would want to...
Perception of Kenyans has been that Ford Kenya is a Western party. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at it, yes, the majority members might come from the Western part, but you'll find that by the political parties act, by the registrar, that every political party should have registered members, at least 1,000 in 24 counties or so. Ford Kenya surpassed that and went to 35 counties. Where we have over 1,000 members. Okay. So I think what has happened is that the diminishing fortunes of Ford Kenya has been a fault of us, the leadership, in the sense that we've not been reaching out to our branches out there. Right now, if you go to a place like Kilifi, Ford Kenya has got a very serious following, but we've not exploited it. And what I'm trying to say here is this lack of having an internal election, NDC and so on, so you infuse new people into the system, has been part of what is killing the party. So it's a question of, yes, you are right, every party will have a certain following from a certain area, but a majority. Yeah. But still, you will still have a wider following nationally. You'd be surprised that in a place like Garissa, we actually have over 3,000 members in Garissa. Okay. Garissa County. Right. I'm just giving you as an example because as Secretary General I've got all those details. So it is a question of we've not been able to excite our base in the last 10 years because we've not been visiting them, we've not been bringing them on board, and they feel they have been disenfranchised, so the activities have gone down. But this can be reworked. I would say that very few parties have that kind of network. I think if I compare Ford Kenya with others, perhaps the only other ones that would have that similar kind of network is KANU and ODM. Right. The rest are a bit shaky. Shaky because one, many of them have never had even an internal election at all. Many of them have never had any whatever of changing leadership and so on. As I told you that we, as Ford Kenya, we've had these transitions before, acrimonious as they are. And even the one we are, the change of guard we are going through now, by the time it gets to May, it will have been about a year since the transition started.
Yeah.
But there will be a transition.
All right.
Because a party cannot continue over 10 years without any internal elections, without any transition to move. Like, for example, I should be able to exit and somebody else takes over.
Right.
So we need to infuse younger blood, given that the majority of voters in this country right now are young people. So to excite them, you have to actually put younger people into those positions.
Okay.
And a party that's going to survive in future has to do that deliberately.
All right.
If we don't do that deliberately, then we'll be left by the roadside.
All right. Well, and speaking of which, let's acknowledge the presence of Honorable Nimrod Bai, who's the Member of Parliament, Kitui. It's good to have you, Mheshimiwa, this morning. Karibu sana. We have eagerly waited for you, and finally you're here.
Yeah, sorry, Linda.
Yeah.
I've been traffic.
It's okay.
Good, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm happy to find my friends around. Mheshimiwa Simeo is actually, I look forward to him. He's an elder parliament.
Yeah.
Some of the guys who've been there longer than us. Yeah, and I'm happy with the discussion. So we can pick it up from there.
Right.
I'm here. Yeah. Thank you. Morning.
All right, good morning. And before we come to you, briefly on this one, I'd love to know why you are not a member of any other party. And I mean, how then is one declared a member of a party? I mean, the common mwananchi, a citizen, is it the fact that you just wake up and say, I would want to say that I believe in the ideologies of Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and so I think I am an ODM member. I'd want to say that, well, I am a supporter of the Hustler Nation, and so I am a member of, I don't know whether Jubilee or UDA. Mheshimiwa Mbai will tell us. I mean, what makes an individual, a citizen, a member of a certain party?
Many things, Linda. One of the things that really should be able to compel an individual is a personal conviction.
Yeah.
And that conviction is also stirred by the behavior of a political party. So how responsive is this party to my needs as an individual? How responsive is this party to the needs of my nation? So Kenya, for instance, how do they take action on things that matter to citizens? And in underscoring that, you look at the ideology of the political party.
All right.
Conventionally, there are lots of ideologies. You could be Republicans, you could be Democrats, you could be Social Democrats, you could be Socialists, you could be anything that is an ideology of that particular party. And then that is what, in my view, should be able to excite me as Kevin to be able to join a party. In Kenya,
out of the 61, none of them has been able to excite you?
In Kenya,
yes,
none of those have been able to excite me. In the sense that you look at what is the identity of Ford Kenya, for example, and maybe because Mheshimiwa Eseli is here, he'll tell us what is the ideology of Ford Kenya. In some parts of this country, rather in some parts of the world, you hear people calling themselves green parties. It's because of everything they wear is green. But is that really what greenness of a political party as an ideology is? How then do you champion for climate change issues? When you talk about social democracy, how social democratic is your ideology as a political party, and how do you fight for even things like labor rights? In a country like Kenya, where doctors can strike for 100 days, and we have political parties that are registered, some of them sit at very high level decision-making spaces in the health committee, both at the National Assembly, Senate, county assemblies. Some of the people who become ministers and cabinet secretaries in our government today have been members of most of these political parties. What is the ideology that should be able to drive them? But in finishing, the nature of the work that I do makes me to be a political. So I walk into a hall and I'm supposed to help people understand politics. I can't tell them I'm a member of Ford Kenya or a member of ODM or a member of CCU or a Chama Cha Uzalendo or a member of which other party, KANU or ANAK Kenya and all that. Because I need to be able to identify, and I need to be able to speak truth to that political party without any conflict of interest or a manner that or anything that will then make me look like I'm either being biased towards a party. But Linda, I'm considering one of the political parties. If after this show, Mheshimiwa convinces me very well to be able to join Ford Kenya, why not? Or if he's in UDA, you say?
I'm worried. I mean, tell us, Mheshimiwa, you will convince him to get to which party? Jubilee, UDA, or which one in particular?
Basically we are in Jubilee.
Okay.
I'm a Jubilee member.
Would you convince him to get to Jubilee today?
Is that Jubilee? Of course he's in Jubilee. And by extension,
yes,
elected through the Jubilee ticket.
Right.
And we have a village. You can see Kano is today in Jubilee, ODM is in Jubilee, Wi-Fi is in Jubilee, Ford Kenya is in Jubilee. The other day, UDA, we just came to understand that UDA is in Jubilee.
Okay.
Jubilee, so every party is Jubilee today. And so Kenya is one country.
Oh.
One mega party, which is Jubilee. All
but
the
is that,
others are villages. It's a coalition of all these parties around the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is now the confusion that we want to.
I think first I would say that for many who don't understand Ford Kenya, is that one main tenet of Ford Kenya is social justice. And indeed, if you repicture back the rundown to 2002, when Ford Kenya teamed up with DP and then Gilu's party to form NAK, and we came up with a manifesto. You'll be surprised that part of that manifesto, a lot of it was borrowed from the Ford Kenya manifesto, in the sense that when we eventually ended up with the free primary education and things like those, free healthcare is what we've not yet attained, but that was one of the things that we were pushing for, because we believe that free market economy is good, but cannot provide certain things. Like free market economy will not be able to provide quality healthcare for Kenyans. Free market economy will not provide quality education for Kenyans. So that social justice part is one of the anchor tenets of Ford Kenya. So it's a question of how do we go about it? Because yes, we were able to institute the free primary education, then we were supposed to go on so that we get up to university level. In fact, in one of my first time in Parliament, I came up with a motion that now compelled government to ensure that Higher Education Loans Board gives loans to non-university sector. And that time, William Samoei Ruto became the Minister for Higher Education and Technology and implemented it. Because using the implementation committee in Parliament, we ensured that was implemented, so that you found that now tertiary colleges also benefiting from that. That's part of the beliefs of Ford Kenya. It's just that we've not trumpeted it enough. Right. But perhaps we need to trumpet it.
You perhaps need to do that, because you've mentioned the key things that you keep saying that, perhaps we have not capitalized on this.
We had a bill then of how to rework NHIF to sort of work like the NHS in the UK, which we need to revisit again. Once we get into government again, which we believe we will, once we get into government again, either as Ford Kenya or in partnership with anybody else, we'll push that part of the healthcare. Because healthcare right now is sick. It's really a problem. So those are the core tenets of Ford Kenya. Right from inception. Remember, from the time the Ford Kenya was created, was the time when it was a single party country under KANU, which didn't seem to have any ideology at all. But Ford Kenya came in with an ideology, which we've kept burning. Many other parties have actually tried to copy that and use, but eventually I would say that it's Ford Kenya that has managed, in partnership with Mwai Kibaki when he took over in 2002, that some of those beliefs were actually incorporated into how the government acted. And I would say that I would pay tribute to those ministers who had come from Fort Kenya and were ministers in the Kibaki regime. They actually tried to implement that.
Yeah.
Take the other day, Mukhisa Kitui declared that he wants to run for presidency.
Right.
And when he was Minister for Trade and Industry, he reduced the time taken for any organization to start doing business in Kenya. Okay. Reduced those licenses and all that. That was part of the issue, part of, you know, what Fort Kenya believes in. So indeed, the only time that Fort Kenya has been close to power, been part of the power, with the ministers who have been put there from the party have implemented quite a lot of the Fort Kenya philosophy. Perhaps what we've not done, as I said, is blown our trumpets about it. But I think the next time we are in government, we'll ensure that we blow our trumpet about it, because I think we are one party.
When is next time?
Yeah, which is from 2022.
All right. Speaking of which, we say once a soldier, always a soldier. Now that you've mentioned Mukhisa Kitui, I'm sure we'll be looking into the coming in of him, as his quest for 2022 is evidently out there in the public domain, and we get to see, well, he is, so to speak, a person who's been in Fort Kenya, like you have rightly put.
You know, like when we are talking about the free trade, whatever, this is the time we need brains like Mukhisa Kitui.
Yes.
To see what we can do for Kenya to benefit and implement it. You know, Kenyans, we are good at sloganeering, but not really implementing. We talk things that we don't implement. Like, I'm very surprised that right now we are still going around saying how many people we have tumeunganisha watu wangapi stima and things like that. That has been done in sectors of this country, not the whole country.
Yes.
So it's not good to just sloganeer. Let's have things actually done. When we talk about how many kilometers of tarmac we've done, but we are avoiding to say where those kilometers of tarmac are. Yeah. Are they throughout the country? So this sloganeering needs to go. And we need to be implementing things equitably throughout the country.
Right.
If you remember, during Mwai Kibaki's time is when the issue of CDF came up. And up to now, nobody has actually come out to show the impact of CDF when it came to rebasing Kenya to a lower middle income.
Right.
What contribution did CDF make to that? Because I believe that the contribution was substantial.
Immense. Well, members of parliament should be able to tell us that.
But
Honorable Bai should be able to tell us that. And the economy, well,
the economists in this country
should
have been neglected.
No,
they have been neglected. They have been pushed aside.
All right.
You see, people do politics and economics and political science. Somehow we are concentrating on the politics. We've forgotten about the economics, such that the economists in the treasury are virtually redundant.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, hold it right there. You spoke about Mukhisa Kitui. Let's not go without mentioning that, a little bit, and getting to understand just how genuine the leaders in Western Kenya would be to back up his move for presidency. Probably a card that one would look at as, one thing that would be looked at as a sure bet for the Western region to be able to clinch the top seat, so to speak. Let's listen into this particular bite, come expound on that, and later on, Honorable Bai will just look at how genuine we are when we say that as a people we are Jubilee Party.
Hata nimeona Mukhisa mheshimiwa ametoka London, sijui ni Australia, sijui ni wapi, Dubai, wherever, Brazil, huko kwenye amekuwa, naona amekuja, hata yeye ametangaza anataka kuwania urais. Na mimi nasema hivi, ndugu Mukhisa ako na haki ya kuwania kitu chochote. Hiyo ni demokrasia. Demokrasia huwezi kataza mtu. Hata Rayton anaweza sema yeye anataka kuwa mbunge, ni demokrasia na ni haki yake. Lakini Mukhisa, what I want you to know, we have moved on. Sisi watu wa Western, we have already moved on. We have made up our mind. We are behind Musalia na ndugu yake Wetangula. Those are our leaders. Hii yako ni kama Mkarung'ang'a. Kuna mtu alikuwa anaitwa Mkarung'ang'a. Wakati Kibaki alikuwa anasimama, kuna mwingine anaitwa Mkarung'ang'a na Chibule Wasuma. Sasa wewe Mukhisa, you are Chibule Wasuma and Mkarung'ang'a. Na yeye kwa sababu ni kijana yetu ya diaspora, hakujangi matanga. Mukhisa hakujangi matanga. Mumewahi ona Mukhisa kwa matanga? Sasa akikuja hapa asiwapatie 200, awapatie 1000. Kila mtu kabla Mukhisa hajaongea mnampiga fine ya 1000. Mnasikia? Mkisikia Mkhisa ako Kakamega, mnaenda nyinyi wote ni mbona ni huko Wenyang. Wewe 1000 kabla hujaongea. Bei ya kuongea ni 1000 kwa kila mwananchi. Kwa sababu hakujaki matanga. Hakujaki matanga. Mwiza ndaki matanga. Hata kuna mtu ya Kisungu, mtu ya diaspora, mtu ya Geneva, ajui Mkapa ni wapi. Hata huku Bungoma kwao Kimilili hakujenga hata choo, hata kama hii darasa limejenga Kimilili hakuna. Sasa yeye ni Mkaru, Ng'ang'a na Chibule Watsuma. Vijana oye! Nasa hao! Nasa Mkhisa! Nasa Mkhisa! Nasa Mkhisa!
Well, an ethno-majoritarian society we are. Mkhisa declared that the first stop, or his first stop, should be Western region, so he can get advice, he can get, blessings, he can be told you can proceed and do this. From what it is that Honorable Eseli Simiyu says, Ford Kenya will probably be fronting, a powerful individual that is in 2022 when they seek to get into government. On the other hand, you can hear such utterances. Just what space is there for Mkhisa Kitui and for the Mulembe nation at large to be able to get a hold of this? And I'll ask you, Honorable Mbai, because then again such is also the scenario in the Ukambani region.
Linda, one of the things we need to realize in our country, and with my good friend here, Honorable Eseli, these very good brains don't do very well in our political landscape.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, you find the likes of Mkhisa Kitui cannot argue the way Mheshimiwa is arguing there. Yes, in wakujangi matanga, ujejenga cho. Mkhisa Kitui is not somebody who will go to that level. But that's what Mwananchi wants to hear.
Okay.
And that's what Mwananchi listens to. And that's what Mama's voting for. So it gets difficult for such a bright fella to make it. But one of the things that our friend is doing there is marketing Mkhisa Kitui even before Mkhisa Kitui lands in Kenya. He's already taking him to the villages and he's making him a presidential candidate. He's campaigning for him. He's popularized his name. Coming to what you are asking, Linda, I've faced some frustrations as a new member of parliament. Because what I thought is what happens in Parliament is not actually what happens, not unless the other parliaments have had something different. And the cell will tell us. You try to push some of the ideas which you want Mwananchi to benefit from. From your local thinking or your international thinking, whatever experience that is driving you. Then you are trying to push the idea, maybe through a motion, maybe through a bill, and for it to go through, it's not easy. It will take ages. We'll find bills which were there we are in the 12th Parliament, bills which were introduced in the 10th Parliament. Up to now, they have not been enacted.
Right.
And the fella who brought them on the floor lost the seat and is home. He can't push it anymore. So he went home before pushing his idea through. And that's what hurts our country. If Parliament was Parliament, if Parliament was, because you find the government as a way of pushing bills through even in less than a week. You find this has originated from government, in less than a week it has gone through. You find a very smart fella is trying to influence something in our society through enacting or changing some law or just policy, but it's so difficult for a party or for an individual member of parliament to push through. And that is happening even to our assemblies. The very, very small macro, whatever is happening in the villages, that needs to be governed by our county governments. You find parties are getting it difficult to push this thing through just because of the political party management and landscape. Is Baba happy with that kind of bill? Is Kalonzo happy with this newcomer MP bringing a new bill and trying to push it through? Is the government machinery happy with how will your bill affect the government operations? What are the intentions? You are from which mulengo of the system, and how we see who is driving the driving force. And from that, you find even in the committees, there's a lot of bureaucracy in Parliament. You know, the Committee of Privilege, the Committee of... There are so many committees which can tell what is happening. Even before you are given the go-ahead as a member of Parliament to push something through, it goes through so many committees of some retired fellas who just found their way to Parliament.
All right, so when you speak about this, then we ask ourselves, as a people who elect you, what we expect. It's a polite way of telling us that, well, in as much as you elect us with good, manifestos that we present with you, to you, with the promises that we have for you, with the policies that have been said, you might as well not expect anything.
I think what we need, from my thinking, is political goodwill from the top seat, from the government. Because when the presidency allows the bureaucracy, that is the executive, to interfere with the legislature, that's where things get difficult. Because you find at any particular time, there is somebody from the executive, be it intelligence, be it whichever department, seated somewhere observing what Parliament is doing. And that fella is reporting. Yeah, this is the truth of the matter. And somebody somewhere, the new animal in town is watching over what is happening. And if whatever you are pushing through is not, the animal is not happy with it, then it finds challenges through some bureaucracies around there. You find an officer from a very high office coming to sit in the office of the leader majority to discuss what should be pushed through. An office of the executive approving what is going to go through in the calendar of the National Assembly, for heavenly sake. I think one of the things we need to look at facing into 2022 is a president who is liberal enough to allow the legislature to go along without interference from the executive. Somebody who has no fear of what the executive is doing, because of the legislative arm of the government is doing. Somebody who has no fear with what even the judiciary is doing. You found officers trying to interfere with the judiciary, which is the last resort in case a Kenyan wants to get justice.
Why all this interference? You've heard us speak, or maybe people say that we probably need a benevolent dictator in a way. When you speak about this, and I'd want to believe it's about President Uhuru Kenyatta because he's the one who's at the top of the helm. When you speak in this sense, then I wonder, in the event that we get this benevolent dictator, then what happens in this case? Because if President Uhuru Kenyatta has been looked at as a person who doesn't so much, crack the whip as expected, and most of the people, even members of Parliament, have been seen, weighing even insults to him, and he does not do much or does not say much. So when we speak of this and we look at a scenario where we get a benevolent dictator, just how much progress are we likely to get as we come to you?
I think Kenya is past the era of a benevolent dictator. The dictator will find it rough, and the dictator has to shape up. Today, the country we have, the far our democracy has come, there's no way a benevolent dictator can make it.
Then why is it that we're not able to make the executive shape up?
I think I will put it more not to the president, the person of the president. You remember when Obama was elected in the first time, in his first time in office, he said that the things he was agitating for as a presidential candidate to come and implement when he gets into the helm of leadership have been curtailed by the system. The military advisors are against some of the things Obama never thought he wants to go straight, and the Guantanamo Bay detention, Obama was like, we close it in the first 100 days. But it was there until Obama went home. Because that's the system, this system thing is all over the world. It runs governments. We have an executive which has been there since Moi time, since Kenyatta time. And some of these guys are just around there. They will live there. And they have lived there. And they have been used to playing around with the minds of the president. The president comes in, a new guy, And they'll tell you, as Mr. President,
this is how we do it.
Oh no, if we don't take care of you, we don't cushion you from the likes of Eseli, you'll be taken around and this country will, then the president gets into a cocoon and kind of fear. We need a president who will be like, yes, I'm getting you right, but look at it, the Mwananchi has elected me, kindly please allow me to run some things without you trying to advise me. Actually, I do them and take care of the issues later.
Allow me to loop in, Mheshimiwa, allow me to loop in the governance expert. And when you see Honorable Eseli Simiyu silent, is probably because he agrees to what it is that Honorable Mbai speaks about. And so in that case, I'd want to get your view, on the lenses of a governance expert. What does it speak of what we expect of the future, of the changes that we desire as a people, of the fact that we look forward to see, our health sector being looked into, that we do not speak of a health sector that is sick today. We seek to have a development. The very same people who we have elected in are the same that are crying foul. What is left of the common Mwananchi? In as much as we acknowledge, yes, the systems have been in existence and they are not going anywhere. I mean, if we are to go back to the days of, colonialism, our forefathers were able to do this. They awarded us independence. Why is it that it sounds so hard for the legislatures, for the leaders that are elected to award us this?
Linda, that's a very technical question. And it is technical because those technicalities play within the realm of politics. Sadly, politics in our country is driven by interests. And these two wonderful gentlemen, I believe, can attest to that. And that's why Mheshimiwa, in his very eloquent presentation, he looks very discouraged and wondering, how do we now move forward? And that's why I think he said, now post-2020, we need somebody or a system that can be able to push for the aspirations of the citizens. And that's why it was also difficult for me to tell you which political party I belong to, or whether I do belong to any, because that really is a frustration that members have to go through. And so in my view, three things that therefore matter. One is separation of power, that the three arms of government are dependent but interdependent.
Okay.
There is no day the executive will perform 100% without the legislature. And that is a fact. The executive needs their laws passed.
Yeah.
If parliamentarians say we are going to boycott, even the people who sit in the office of the leader of majority and sit with the clerk and sit with the speaker will not meet their agenda. If parliamentarians decide to say we are not going to parliament because the manifestos are not being done properly, the promises we made to our people, we said we would build roads, they need the cabinet secretary roads and infrastructure to pass his good laws and policies, but they also need their roads to be done in their constituencies, because failure to that, the Mwananchi will not listen to this kind of story.
Right.
He will say, but you came here, you are 17 of you, you proved to be the best, I voted for you. You can't come back and say there are cartels in Bunge who cannot make you, because otherwise you won't get elected the next time. So dependence and interdependency, I think, is a very powerful principle of governance that the three arms need to begin to look at and embrace, and consider that even the judiciary also works within laws that are made in the House, at the House, and that's the legislature. And they are exercised. They need the executive to therefore execute the kind of laws that, judicial action that they take into account. Yeah. Number two, the political parties. In this kind of sphere, what is the role of Jubilee? Because he said that he is Jubilee, and Jubilee is the ruling party of the day.
Right.
If a member of Jubilee will still have a feeling that my party is not responding to me, cross over to Ford Kenya. And I think in Kenya you need to resign from your party. A by-election is called, and then you register, you go to Ford Kenya, and then you vie for elections. And then the Kenyan will ask you, what happened to Jubilee? Number three is balancing of interests. The president, who is a party leader of Jubilee, has his interests. Unfortunately for Jubilee, almost nothing they said, including the stadia in 6 months, nothing is seemingly working.
Okay.
The political party is also not working, which is a very serious failure of governance within the ruling party itself. But if a member of parliament from the ruling party can share this kind of frustration, Linda, then it means that things are not looking very rosy.
Yeah.
And so in my view, this is a moment of learning. We are learning very important lessons as a people. As governance people, we're also looking at what is working and what is not working. And I think that's probably part of why we have the First Amendment of our Constitution, that there are certain things that have not been working very well. So if we can be able to use the opportunity, if that time comes, to also cure some of the reasons why parliamentarians' interests are not being met and balanced properly within the House, then I think that should be able to give it the opportunity for which it deserves. But that really rests on the political party.
Right.
Does Jubilee feel that its members are not being given the prime view from Parliament, and that they are not able to pass to get their interests met? Then that really is supposed to go back to the political party, and then ask yourself if the leader of majority is a member of your political party, because the ruling party of the day has the leadership of the House.
Yeah.
And then you have the minority. Then you have the whips of the House. They also come from the ruling party, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. If the whips also come from the ruling party, why can't members' interests be met?
Right.
And if they cannot be met, then please share a calendar of your parliament and say, your bill cannot come through this time because we have this from State House, we have this from the Office of the Deputy President, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior has interest in security, so these three are our priority. When it comes to July, then please bring your bill so that the member is not feeling so frustrated. And then we have a system within which things can be done. And the citizens, because we are the people who vote for them, and
Yeah.
the Mwananchi will not listen to this, I repeat. They want to see action. They want to see service delivery. And you spoke about health as I finish. For us to meet the dreams of our health sector as a people, we must fully deprivatize the healthcare of Kenya.
All right.
Health is one of the big four. Is a legacy project of His Excellency the President. Why is it not working? And the President sent monies to 4 pilot counties. Today, there are about 16 counties that are beneficiaries of universal healthcare, the UHC, which is part of the big four.
Yeah.
Why is health not working? There is a problem with the system, and one of it from conversations that we have had. In fact, Linda's County Governance Watch will be hosting a national health conference towards the end of this month or early next month,
Right.
to just look at what is really ailing the health system of Kenya. And we want to bring together the practitioners, the donors, like Danida, Danish Embassy, and all these others who sent health money to the counties to come to the table, and let's talk about why are doctors on strike? Why must people be, heavily taxed when they are going to ask for health care from their facilities?
Yeah.
Why are governors sending doctors home, left, right, and center? Is
Right.
it within their power to hire and fire? So for health care to work, Parliament must do its work. The health committee of Bunge must do its work. And I think in finishing, there has to be a close liaison between the executive, so cabinet, the Ministry of Health, and also the legislature. What kind of laws are we passing to be able to give life to healthcare for it to work?
And counties too, because
and then
it's a
counties
devolved
as well.
unit,
Yeah,
yes.
because health really, a greater chunk of it is revolved, Schedule 4.
Yeah.
Then ask ourselves, what can counties do properly that they're not doing, and what do they need to be able to put it into force?
Honorable
Thank
Eseli
you.
Simiyu is a doctor. We'll be coming back to him. Mheshimiwa, kindly hold your thoughts for now. We take a quick break and then we come back direct to you.
When the clock strikes 7.
A respective story, that is constituency, and we get to ask the Mheshimiwa questions that are necessary. We all know very well that upon election or upon being elected, there are a couple of things that they seek to address for the people. Has he done so? If not so, will he be amongst the people who blame it on COVID-19? Welcome on board. My name is Linda Alela. It is good to have you join us, and like I have said, we have Mheshimiwa Mwala constituency joining us this morning. Good to have you, Honorable.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you so much for your time. And we go straight to the conversation. Like I said, it's Honorable Vincent Musyoka. And it's all about what it is that you've done for your people. I know we'd love to talk about the politics of the nation as it now. Well, if we get ample time, then we'll touch that. But first and foremost, as a member of parliament, the education sector sits squarely within your own respective docket. We need to know how much you've done in terms of that. I mean, we have that introduction of digital bursary management system. How has it functioned in Mwala?
Thank you, Linda. And let me take this opportunity first to thank our viewers. And it has been quite an opportunity for me to serve the people of Mwala. Yeah. And I am sure it will not get to that where I will need to blame COVID.
I hope so.
Yeah, and Linda, just look at the latest InfoTrack ranking. My approval rating wasn't really that bad. Yes. I was ranked third best in the country.
In the country.
Yeah, and I believe it's, there are certain foundations in my leadership that I think really have helped, because it's not just about doing things for the people, it's also how you do them.
All right.
And I've really tried to base my leadership on one, transparency, public participation, efficiency.
Right.
And therefore it rolls down to not just about building a classroom, for instance, but how much you spend to build it, and you let